The massive arena stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal floors, its transparent dome reaching toward the purple-tinted sky of Nexus Prime. Thousands of alien spectators filled the floating observation platforms, their excited chittering and roars creating a symphony of anticipation. Representatives from 47 different species had gathered for the most prestigious event in the galaxy, the Champions Tournament. Marcus Chun adjusted his worn military jacket and checked his weapon one final time. The rifle in his hands had seen better days. Its metal surface bore the scars of countless battles, rust spots dotting the barrel like age marks on weathered skin. The stock was wrapped in faded green tape, and the scope had a hairline crack running through its left lens. To anyone looking at it, the weapon appeared ready for a scrapyard, not a galactic championship. Around him, the other competitors prepared their weapons with theatrical flair. Zephyr, 9, the crystalline warrior from the Kalos system, channeled pure energy through his translucent body, creating a weapon of living light that hummed with power. The Thrakkery champion, a massive insectoid creature named Hive King Zack, wielded biomechanical launchers that grew from his own carapace, firing acid projectiles that could melt through titanium. Captain Vex of the Andromedian fleet carried a plasma rifle worth more than most planets' annual budgets, its surface gleaming with embedded diamonds and rare metals. The crowd's attention focused on these magnificent warriors and their equally impressive weapons. When the cameras briefly panned across Marcus, the audience's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. Laughter rippled through the stands like a wave. The commentators, speaking in 17 different languages simultaneously, could barely contain their amusement. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications, announced Overlord Thane, the tournament's host, his 4 arms gesturing dramatically. We have an unusual entry this cycle. From the remote system Sol, 3, a representative of the species humans. He paused as more laughter filled the arena, armed with what appears to be a museum piece. Marcus had heard worse. During his 20-year military career, he had learned to tune out everything except what mattered. Right now, what mattered was understanding his opponents, the arena layout, and the wind patterns created by the dome's atmosphere processors. The tournament rules were simple. 48 competitors would face elimination rounds until only one remained. Each round tested different combat skills, from precision shooting to tactical maneuvering. The final champion would earn not just glory, but also the right to represent their species in the Galactic Council's Military Advisory Board. Earth had never had a representative in the tournament. Humans were considered a primitive species, barely worthy of acknowledgement. Their technology was centuries behind the galactic standard, their weapons crude and inefficient. When Earth's application had been submitted 3 months ago, the Galactic Council had accepted it purely for entertainment value. The idea of a human competing against warriors who had conquered star systems was too amusing to resist. Marcus understood this. He had volunteered knowing he would be a laughingstock, knowing that failure was not just expected, but guaranteed in everyone's minds. Everyone except his own. The first elimination round began with a precision shooting challenge. Targets materialized across the arena at varying distances and sizes, some stationary, others moving in complex patterns. Competitors had 60 seconds to hit as many as possible. Advanced weapon systems locked onto multiple targets simultaneously. Energy beams calculated trajectory adjustments in microseconds, and bioweapons adapted their properties in real time. Marcus took a different approach. He found a stable shooting position, controlled his breathing, and acquired his first target through the cracked scope. The rifle kicked against his shoulder as he fired, the gunpowder explosion seeming primitive and harsh compared to the silent energy weapons around him. The projectile traveled in a simple arc, following basic physics rather than guided systems or energy manipulation. It struck the target dead center. One by one, Marcus worked through the course. His rate of fire was slower than most competitors, but each shot found its mark. He ignored the fast-moving targets that others chased with their auto-tracking systems, instead focusing on the distant, nearly invisible targets that required pure skill to hit. When the round ended, the scoreboard showed Marcus in 15th place out of 48 competitors. Not impressive by galactic standards, but enough to advance to the next round. The crowd's laughter had died down slightly, replaced by confused murmuring. How had the primitive human managed to hit targets that some advanced weapons had missed? Zephyr 9 approached Marcus between rounds, his crystalline form refracting the arena lights into rainbow patterns. "Your weapon," he said, his voice like wind chimes, "it lacks any enhancement systems. How do you compensate for atmospheric distortion and gravitational variance?" Marcus looked up at the towering alien warrior. "Practice," he said simply. "Lots of practice." The second round tested mobility and quick target acquisition. Competitors had to navigate an obstacle course while engaging hostiles that appeared without warning. Most warriors relied on their weapons' automatic targeting systems, firing rapidly while their equipment handled the aiming calculations. Marcus moved differently. He advanced slowly, using cover effectively, exposing himself only when necessary. His rifle cracked repeatedly, each shot deliberate and measured, while others sprayed energy across the course, hoping their weapons' computers would find targets. Marcus aimed each shot himself. By the round's end, he had advanced to 8th place. The crowd's murmuring had grown louder, more concerned. Commentators struggled to explain how a human with obsolete equipment was outperforming warriors with technology that should have made victory inevitable. Captain Vex, resplendent in his powered armor, confronted Marcus after the scores were announced. "Your results are impossible," he declared, his mechanical voice amplifier making him sound like thunder. "That weapon cannot achieve such accuracy without targeting assistance." Marcus checked his rifle's action, ejecting a spent cartridge that clinked onto the crystal floor. The simple brass case looked pathetic next to the advanced ammunition and energy cells scattered around them. "This rifle doesn't aim itself," he agreed. "That's what makes it reliable." The crowd fell silent at this exchange. For the first time, some spectators began to watch the human competitor with something other than amusement. The weapon that had seemed laughably primitive now appeared more mysterious than ridiculous. Hive King Zack clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "You claim reliability in simplicity, yet complexity provides superior performance. How do you reconcile this contradiction?" Marcus shouldered his rifle and looked up at the massive insectoid. "Simple things break less often. When they do break, they're easier to fix. And they work the same way every time, no matter what." As the first day of competition concluded, Marcus cleaned his rifle with practiced movements. The ancient rituals of maintenance felt familiar and comforting in the alien environment. Around him, other competitors performed complex calibration sequences on their weapons, adjusting quantum matrices and fine-tuning particle accelerators. The tournament bracket showed 24 competitors remaining. Marcus sat in 6th place overall, a position that should have been impossible for someone carrying what the Galactic media had dubbed the Rust Bucket Rifle. News feeds across the galaxy buzzed with speculation about hidden technology, secret enhancements, or some kind of deception. But Marcus knew the truth was simpler and more disturbing to their worldview than any conspiracy. The rifle in his hands was exactly what it appeared to be, a well-maintained but aging projectile weapon built on principles that hadn't changed in centuries. Its power came not from advanced technology, but from the skill of the person wielding it. And tomorrow, that truth would become even more apparent as the competition entered its deadlier phases. The second day's challenges escalated dramatically. The arena transformed overnight, becoming a simulation of varied combat environments. Swamps materialized with thick, choking fog. Desert zones shimmered with heat that would test weapon cooling systems. Frozen wastelands promised to challenge equipment's temperature tolerances. Each environment was designed to push both warrior and weapon to their limits. Marcus studied the terrain during the brief preparation period. Unlike his competitors, who relied on their weapons' environmental adaptation protocols, he needed to understand how atmospheric conditions would affect his simple projectiles. Humidity would slow bullets slightly. Temperature changes would alter powder burn rates. Wind patterns would push projectiles off course. The third round began in the swamp zone. Visibility dropped to mere meters through the artificial fog. Energy weapons lit up the mist like lightning, their beams visible to any observer. Bioweapons adapted their firing patterns, using echolocation and chemical sensors to track targets. Advanced targeting systems switched to infrared and electromagnetic detection modes. Marcus disappeared into the fog like a ghost. His rifle made no light signature when fired, produced no electromagnetic emissions, generated no detectable energy patterns. The chemical signature of gunpowder was minimal compared to the swamp's natural odors. For the first time in the competition, his primitive weapon became an advantage. Zephyr 9 fell first. His crystalline body glowed like a beacon in the mist, beautiful but utterly visible. Marcus's bullet shattered his energy matrix before the alien warrior even knew he was being hunted. The crowd gasped as their third-ranked competitor materialized outside the arena, eliminated by what appeared to be invisible fire. 2 more competitors followed. A Rigelian engineer with a smart gun system that could track 15 targets simultaneously never saw the human who put 3 rounds through his armor's weak points. A Centauri assassin, renowned for stealth capabilities, fell to a shot that came from a direction her sensors insisted was empty. When the fog cleared, Marcus stood among the final 16 competitors. The arena fell absolutely silent. The human who had been a joke 24 hours ago had just eliminated 3 tournament favorites using a weapon that shouldn't have been able to compete. Captain Vex's mechanical voice cut through the silence. Impossible. Our sensors detected no targeting emissions, no guidance systems, no enhancement technologies. How did he acquire targets in zero visibility conditions? Marcus reloaded his rifle manually, working the bolt with mechanical precision. I listened, he said, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. Your weapons make noise. Your armor makes noise. You make noise. I just followed the sound. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Galactic audience. For centuries, military doctrine had focused on technological superiority. Warriors trained extensively with their weapons' computer systems, learning to interpret sensor data and trust their equipment's calculations. The idea of relying on unenhanced human senses seemed not just primitive, but actively stupid. Yet those primitive senses had just outperformed some of the galaxy's most advanced military technology. The 4th round took place in the desert zone. Extreme heat stress cooling systems and drain power cells. Sand infiltrated sensitive electronics. Most competitors struggled as their weapons overheated or malfunctioned in the harsh conditions. Marcus's rifle operated the same way it had for the past 100 years. The metal was hot to touch, but the mechanical action remained reliable. Gunpowder burned consistently regardless of ambient temperature. The weapon required no power source, no cooling system, no complex electronics that could be compromised by sand or heat. Hive King Zack approached the human during a brief rest period. His bioweapons were struggling, their organic components stressed by the artificial environment. Your weapon shows no degradation in performance, he observed, mandibles clicking with what might have been respect. How does such simplicity achieve such consistency? Marcus wiped sand from his rifle's action, a task that took seconds compared to the complex maintenance routines other competitors performed on their weapons. It's designed to work in conditions like this, he explained. Actually, it's designed to work in worse conditions than this. We built these weapons for worlds where nothing works right, where electronics fail and complex systems break down. The insectoid warrior's compound eyes studied the human intently. Your species designs for failure rather than optimal performance. This seems counterintuitive. We design for reality. Marcus corrected. Optimal conditions don't exist in combat. Everything goes wrong. Plans fail. Equipment breaks. When that happens, you need something that will still work when everything else quits. This philosophy was foreign to galactic military thinking. The galaxy's warriors were accustomed to overwhelming technological superiority, to weapons that could compensate for almost any situation through advanced systems and complex algorithms. The idea of intentionally choosing simpler, more limited tools seemed like deliberate handicapping. But as the desert round concluded with Marcus advancing to the final 8, that philosophy began to make terrible sense. While others struggled with overheated systems and sand-clogged mechanisms, the human's ancient rifle continued functioning exactly as designed. The 5th round introduced active countermeasures. The arena deployed jamming systems designed to disrupt targeting computers, electromagnetic pulse generators that could disable advanced electronics, and adaptive armor that learned from each attack to improve its defenses. One by one, the remaining competitors found their weapons neutralized. Plasma rifles shut down when their targeting systems were jammed. Smart weapons became stupid when their guidance computers were fried. Bioweapons adapted slowly to the arena's countermeasures, but adapted too late to save their wielders. Marcus's rifle ignored every countermeasure completely. Electromagnetic pulses had no effect on mechanical systems. Jamming signals couldn't disrupt a weapon with no electronics to jam. Adaptive armor systems were designed to counter energy weapons and guided projectiles, not simple bullets flying in straight lines at predictable velocities. Captain Vex fell when his powered armor's defensive algorithms couldn't calculate an appropriate response to something as primitive as a rifle bullet. The projectile punched through plates designed to disperse energy beams and deflect guided munitions. Hive King Zack lasted longer, his natural armor impressive even without technological enhancement. But biology had its limits, and Marcus found them with surgical precision. 3 shots placed exactly where an insectoid's carapace would be weakest dropped the tournament's second-ranked warrior. When the smoke cleared, for competitors remained. Marcus Chun, the human with his rusted rifle. HFY, a void walker who could manipulate space-time itself. Quantum Prime, an artificial intelligence housed in a nearly indestructible robotic body. And Warlord Kresh, whose personal combat record included the conquest of 17 systems. The crowd that had laughed at the human's primitive weapon now watched in stunned silence. Commentators struggled to explain what they were witnessing. Military analysts across the galaxy frantically revised their understanding of combat effectiveness. The human had reached the tournament's final stages not despite his weapon's simplicity, but because of it. Every advanced system that should have granted overwhelming advantage had instead created vulnerability. The galaxy's most sophisticated weapons had been defeated by something their ancestors might have recognized. As the arena prepared for the semi-final rounds, Marcus checked his rifle one final time. The metal was still rusted, the tape still faded, the scope still cracked. But the weapon that had seemed like a relic from a forgotten age now appeared to be something far more significant. It looked like the future of warfare itself. The semi-final arena resembled a 3-dimensional maze of crystalline corridors and floating platforms. Gravity shifted randomly between surfaces, creating an environment where traditional concepts of up and down became meaningless. The challenge was designed to test spatial awareness, adaptability, and weapon effectiveness in impossible conditions. Marcus found himself paired against HFY, the Void Walker. The alien being existed partially outside normal space-time, appearing as a shifting shadow that could phase through solid matter and emerge from impossible angles. Spectators from across the galaxy watched with fascination as 2 radically different approaches to combat prepared to clash. HFY materialized behind Marcus, reality bending around his form as he stepped partially out of normal space. Energy weapons had proven useless against Voidwalkers in previous tournaments. The beings could simply phase out of existence when attacked, then reappear to strike from unexpected directions. Marcus spun and fired in one fluid motion. The bullet traveled through space according to simple physics, following a straight line until it encountered resistance. HFY attempted to phase out of reality to avoid the projectile, but discovered something unprecedented. The bullet followed him into whatever dimension he occupied. The Void Walker materialized fully, black ichor leaking from a wound that shouldn't have been possible. His voice echoed from several dimensions simultaneously as he spoke. Impossible. Projectile weapons cannot affect transdimensional entities. Your bullet should have passed through empty space. Marcus worked his rifle's bolt, chambering another round. Maybe where you come from. But that bullet was made on Earth with Earth physics. It doesn't care about your local rules. The revelation sent shockwaves through the scientific community watching the tournament. Earth's weapons operated under physical laws that were apparently more fundamental than the exotic physics the galaxy had embraced. While advanced civilizations had moved beyond simple projectile weapons to energy manipulation and space-time distortion, humans had perfected systems that worked regardless of local reality conditions. HFY attempted several more phase shifts, but each time Marcus's bullets found him. The Void Walker's abilities, which had made him nearly invincible against energy weapons, provided no defense against simple kinetic projectiles that refused to acknowledge the existence of parallel dimensions. When the match ended with HFY's elimination, the crowd sat in stunned silence. The human had just defeated a being that could manipulate reality itself, using a weapon that operated on principles older than galactic civilization. The second semifinal pitted Quantum Prime against Warlord Kresh. The artificial intelligence's robotic body was a masterpiece of defensive engineering, covered in reactive armor that could adapt to any attack pattern. Warlord Kresh wielded weapons that had conquered star systems, his tactical knowledge earned through centuries of warfare. Their battle was spectacular, filling the arena with explosions and energy discharges as advanced weapon systems clashed. Quantum Prime's adaptive algorithms learned from each attack, becoming more resistant with every exchange. Warlord Kresh's experience allowed him to vary his assault patterns, preventing the AI from fully adapting to his tactics. In the end, Warlord Kresh's superior experience prevailed. His final assault overwhelmed Quantum Prime's adaptive systems through sheer tactical brilliance, demonstrating that even artificial intelligence had limits when faced with true combat mastery. The final match was set, Marcus Chun with his rusted rifle against Warlord Kresh, the galaxy's most feared military commander. During the break between semifinals and finals, representatives from across the galaxy surrounded Marcus. Military analysts wanted to examine his weapon, scientists demanded to understand Earth's physics, and weapons manufacturers offered fortune for the rights to reproduce his rifle. Marcus politely declined all requests. The rifle stayed with him, and its secrets remained Earth's alone. General Thax of the Centauri Republic approached with a different offer. Human warrior, he said, his translation device struggling with concepts of honor and respect that rarely applied to primitive species. Your performance has been unexpected. The Centauri Republic would be honored to provide you with proper weapons for the final match. Surely you cannot wish to face Warlord Kresh with that antique. Marcus looked down at his rifle, then back at the general. This antique has got me this far. I think I'll stick with what works. But Warlord Kresh has conquered 17 systems. His personal kill count exceeds 10 million. He wields weapons that can destroy cities. How can you possibly hope to match such power? Marcus shouldered his rifle and began walking toward the final arena. I don't need to match his power, General. I just need to be more accurate than he is. The final arena was simple. A circular platform 500 meters across, with no cover, no environmental hazards, no complex challenges. Just two warriors, their weapons, and pure combat skill. The galaxy held its breath as the competitors took their positions. Warlord Kresh stood 3 meters tall, his 4 arms each carrying a different weapon system. Plasma cannons, particle beams, guided missile launchers, and a gravity distortion generator that could crush enemies from a distance. His armor had been forged from the hull metal of conquered battleships, each plate engraved with the names of worlds he had claimed. Marcus checked his rifle one final time. 47 rounds remained in his ammunition supply. Against most opponents in this tournament, that would have been more than enough. Against Warlord Kresh, it might not be nearly sufficient. Overlord Thane raised his 4 arms for attention. Warriors of the galaxy, his voice boomed across the arena, and, through countless communication systems, you are about to witness the final match of this year's Champions Tournament. In the red corner, representing the Kreshani Empire, Warlord Kresh, the Conqueror, destroyer of systems, master of 1,000 campaigns. The crowd erupted in cheers and roars. Warlord Kresh had been the tournament favorite from the beginning, his reputation preceding him across the galaxy. In the blue corner, Overlord Thane continued, his voice dropping slightly, representing the Sol system, Marcus Chun of Earth, armed with his ancestral weapon. The reaction was mixed. Some spectators cheered for the underdog, amazed by his journey to the finals. Others maintained skeptical silence, unable to believe that primitive weapons could compete at this level. Most simply watched in fascination, eager to see how this impossible story would end. The horns sounded, and the final battle began. Warlord Kresh immediately unleashed a devastating barrage from all 4 weapons simultaneously. Plasma bolts, particle beams, guided missiles, and gravity distortions filled the air between the two fighters. The assault was designed to overwhelm any defense through sheer volume of fire. Marcus rolled to his left, using the platform's slight curvature to break line of sight for a split second. Guided missiles streaked past him, confused by the sudden disappearance of their target. Plasma bolts scorched the platform where he had been standing. From his new position, Marcus acquired his target and fired. The bullet flew true, but Warlord Kresh's armor deflected it harmlessly. The alien warlord's defensive systems had been designed to withstand much more powerful attacks than a simple projectile weapon could deliver. But Marcus had expected this. His first shot had not been intended to penetrate armor. It had been a ranging shot, allowing him to confirm distance, wind conditions, and the exact performance of his weapon in the arena's environment. His second shot aimed for the gap between armor plates where Warlord Kresh's primary weapons were mounted. The bullet struck a power coupling, sending electrical feedback through the Warlord's plasma cannon system. 1/4 of his firepower went offline in a shower of sparks. Warlord Kresh roared his fury and adjusted his tactics. If overwhelming firepower wouldn't work, he would rely on his gravity distortion generator to crush this impudent primitive from a distance. Marcus felt the gravitational field intensify around him, threatening to pin him to the platform. But gravity affected everything equally, including the bullets from his rifle. He compensated instinctively for the alter ballistics and put his third shot through the gravity generator's focusing array. The crowd watched in amazement as the humans systematically dismantled the most feared warrior in the galaxy using nothing but precise shooting and tactical awareness. Each shot was carefully placed to disable specific systems rather than attempting to penetrate armor designed to withstand starship weapons. Warlord Kresh, reduced to 2 functional weapon systems, charged across the platform with surprising speed for such a massive being. If range combat would not work, he would rely on his close combat expertise. Marcus stood his ground until the last possible moment, then sidestepped the charge and put 2 rounds through the coupling systems of Kresh's remaining ranged weapons. Now the galaxy's most feared conqueror was reduced to hand-to-hand combat against an opponent 1/3 his size. But size and strength meant little when facing an opponent who fought with surgical precision. Marcus used his mobility advantage to stay out of Kresh's reach while systematically targeting the weak points in his armor. Joint seals, sensor arrays, life support connections. Each shot carefully placed to degrade the Warlord's combat effectiveness. The end came suddenly. Warlord Kresh, blinded by damaged sensors and struggling with armor that no longer moved smoothly, made one final desperate charge. Marcus stepped aside and fired his final shot through the one gap he had been saving for this moment, the narrow opening between helmet and chest plate that provided access to the Warlord's primary life support systems. Warlord Kresh collapsed, not dead but completely defeated. His armor's life support systems kept him alive, but he could no longer continue fighting. The arena fell completely silent. Then, slowly, the cheering began. The victory ceremony was unlike anything in the tournament's history. Marcus stood in the center of the crystal arena, still holding his rusted rifle, while representatives from 47 different species applauded with whatever appendages their biology provided. The sound was thunderous, a symphony of chittering, roaring, whistling, and harmonics that no human throat could produce. Overlord Thane approached with the champion's crown, a circlet of pure energy that would mark Marcus as the greatest warrior in the galaxy. But before the ceremony could be completed, a commotion erupted in the VIP viewing area. Fleet Admiral Zorik of the Hegemony Defense Force was having what could charitably be called a breakdown. The massive reptilian being was gesticulating wildly with all 6 arms. His scales flushed the deep purple of extreme agitation. "This is impossible," he roared, his voice carrying across the arena without amplification. "No primitive species can defeat our most advanced warriors. There must be deception, hidden technology, some form of cheating." A murmur of agreement rippled through portions of the crowd. The idea that Earth, a backwater world barely worthy of notice, had produced a champion was more than some could accept. Accusations began flying. Secret alien technology, genetic modifications, hidden assistance from advanced civilizations. Marcus looked up at the VIP section and made a decision that would change everything. "Bring down your champion," he called out, his voice somehow carrying clearly through the arena's acoustics. "Pick anyone you want. Give them your best weapon, your finest armor, your most advanced technology. I'll face them right now, with this same rifle." The crowd's reaction was immediate and explosive. Some species erupted in outrage at the human's audacity. Others cheered the unprecedented challenge. Never in galactic history had a champion offered to defend his title immediately after winning it, against any opponent the defeated could choose. Fleet Admiral Zoric's eyes glittered with malicious satisfaction. "You dare challenge the hegemony's finest? Very well, Primitive. We accept your foolish challenge." He turned to his escort, selecting the largest and most impressive warrior present. "Captain Nexus 7, you will restore our honor." Captain Nexus 7 descended from the VIP platform like a force of nature. The cyborg warrior stood 4 meters tall, his organic components enhanced with the finest military technology in the galaxy. Neural implants provided superhuman reflexes. Quantum processors calculated trajectory paths in real time. His weapon was a prototype plasma lance that could punch through starship hulls. But Marcus had learned something during the tournament that the galaxy's military leaders had missed. Advanced technology created dependencies. The more complex a system became, the more points of potential failure it possessed. And Marcus had spent the last 3 days studying exactly how those failures could be exploited. The impromptu match began without ceremony. Captain Nexus 7's quantum processors immediately calculated optimal firing solutions, his neural implants accelerating his response time beyond normal biological limits. The plasma lance charged with a sound like breaking thunder. Marcus moved the instant he saw the cyborg's targeting systems activate. His rifle cracked once, the bullet striking the plasma lance's charging coil before the weapon could fire. The prototype weapon exploded in Captain Nexus 7's hands, sending the cyborg stumbling backward with damaged armor and overloaded circuits. Before the galaxy's finest warrior could recover, Marcus put 2 more rounds through his neural implant housing. Captain Nexus 7's enhanced reflexes shut down as his quantum processors failed, reducing him to baseline organic capabilities. The match lasted 43 seconds. The crowd sat in stunned silence as Captain Nexus 7 was helped from the arena. His advanced technology reduced a smoking wreckage by 3 bullets from a weapon the galaxy considered obsolete. The implications were staggering, and military leaders throughout the audience began to understand them. General Yith of the Stellar Alliance stood up in the VIP section. "Human warrior," she called out, "I would speak with you." Marcus nodded respectfully. "Go ahead, General. Your weapon. It operates on principles we had forgotten. Simple kinetic projectiles following ballistic trajectories. No guidance systems to jam. No energy signatures to track. No complex electronics to disable." Her voice carried the tone of someone making an unwelcome discovery. "How many such weapons does your species possess?" Marcus considered the question carefully. Earth's military capabilities were not classified information, exactly, but neither were they widely advertised. Every human soldier carries one. We have variations for different roles, but the basic principle is the same across all of them. And your soldiers are trained to use these weapons with the same precision you have demonstrated? Basic marksmanship is required for military service. Most of us can hit what we aim at. The silence that followed this statement was profound. General Yith sat down heavily, and Marcus could see her recalculating her understanding of galactic military balance. If Earth possessed millions of soldiers equipped with weapons that could neutralize advanced technology through simple precision shooting, then everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare was obsolete. Commander Vash of the Andromedan Navy leaned forward. "Human, what would it take for your species to share this technology with the Galactic Council?" Marcus almost smiled at the question. "Commander, this technology isn't secret. The principles have been available in our databases since we joined the Galactic Communication Network. Any species could build rifles like this one. Then, why haven't we? Because you moved beyond them. You decided that more complex was automatically better. You forgot that sometimes simple solutions work better than complicated ones." Overlord Thane stepped forward to continue the victory ceremony, but Marcus held up a hand to stop him. Before we finish this, I think the galaxy needs to understand something important. He held up his rifle for everyone to see. This weapon was built on Earth almost a century ago. It's fired thousands of rounds, been dropped in mud, soaked in salt water, frozen in ice, and baked in desert heat. The stock is cracked, the metal is rusted, and the scope has been broken for 20 years. Marcus worked the rifle's action, demonstrating its mechanical simplicity. But it still works. It works the same way every time. It doesn't need power cells or maintenance protocols or software updates. When I pull this trigger, a bullet comes out of that barrel at a predictable velocity in a predictable direction. That's all it does, and it does that perfectly. He looked up at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. You built weapons that can manipulate time and space. You created armor that adapts to any threat. You developed targeting systems that can lock onto enemies across star systems. But you forgot how to make things that simply work. Marcus shouldered his rifle and continued. This tournament wasn't won by advanced technology. It was won by reliability, precision, and understanding that complexity is often the enemy of effectiveness. Your weapons failed because they were too sophisticated to function when conditions became difficult. The implication hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The galaxy's military superiority was based on systems that became vulnerable in exactly the conditions where they were most needed. Advanced targeting could be jammed. Energy weapons could be overloaded. Adaptive systems could be confused. But a rifle bullet followed the same physical laws regardless of circumstances. Prince Kaler of the Nexian Empire spoke into the silence. Are you saying that our entire military doctrine is flawed? Marcus considered the question seriously. I'm saying that your military doctrine assumes optimal conditions that rarely exist in actual combat. You've optimized for best-case scenarios instead of worst-case realities. And Earth's military doctrine? We assume everything will go wrong, and we prepare for that. Fleet Admiral Zorik had been listening to this exchange with growing alarm. You speak of Earth's military as if it poses a threat to the established order. But Earth has no space fleet, no planet-killer weapons, no star system defenses. How could a primitive world challenge galactic civilization? Marcus looked directly at the massive reptilian admiral. Admiral, how many planets in your empire have you personally conquered? 17 worlds have fallen before my fleets. And how many soldiers did you lose taking those worlds? Casualties were minimal. Our technological superiority made resistance futile. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Those worlds didn't have rifles, did they? Their defenders relied on the same advanced weapons your forces carry. Energy weapons that could be jammed, guided missiles that could be confused, complex systems that could be overwhelmed. The color drained from Admiral Zorik's scales as he began to understand the implications. You're saying that Earth's primitive weapons would be more effective against our forces than the advanced systems we've been facing. I'm saying that your technological advantages become technological vulnerabilities when facing an enemy that doesn't rely on the same systems. The arena had become completely silent as the galaxy's military leaders absorbed this revelation. Their weapons were designed to counter other advanced weapons. Their defenses assumed sophisticated attacks. Their tactics relied on technological superiority. None of it would work against an enemy armed with simple, reliable tools and the skill to use them effectively. Commander Thex of the Void Fleet stood up slowly. Human, what does Earth want from the galaxy? Marcus looked up at the assembled representatives of 47 different species, all watching him with mixtures of respect, fear, and desperate curiosity. The question was more complex than it appeared. What did Earth want? Trade opportunities? Technological exchanges? Alliance agrément? Peace, he said simply. We want to be left alone to develop as we choose, trade with whoever will deal fairly with us, and defend ourselves if necessary. And if the galaxy cannot offer such terms? Marcus's grip on his rifle shifted almost imperceptibly, a movement that somehow every military officer in the arena noticed simultaneously. Then, the galaxy will learn why Earth spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of warfare instead of the art of conquest. The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. Earth didn't want to fight the galaxy, but it was prepared to do so if necessary. And based on what they had just witnessed, such a fight might not have the outcome anyone expected. 6 months later, the galaxy was a very different place. The Galactic Council had voted unanimously to grant Earth full membership with all associated rights and protections. Trade agreements flowed like water as species after species sought access to human manufacturing techniques. But it wasn't Earth's advanced technology they wanted. It was Earth's approach to making things that simply worked. Marcus stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Earth Embassy Station, watching ships from across the galaxy arrive and depart in a steady stream. Each vessel carried cargo holds full of human-manufactured goods, tools that didn't break, vehicles that ran reliably, and, yes, weapons that fired accurately regardless of conditions. "Strange," said a voice behind him. Marcus turned to see Overlord Thane approaching, his 4 arms carrying what appeared to be a human-manufactured rifle. "6 months ago, we laughed at your primitive technology. Now every military force in the galaxy is placing orders for these same weapons." Marcus examined the rifle Thane carried. It was new production from Earth's expanded manufacturing facilities, built to the same specifications that had guided human weapons development for centuries. Simple, reliable, effective. Not so primitive after all. "We prefer the term elegantly functional," Thane replied with what might have been humor. "Our weapons engineers are calling it a revolution in design philosophy. Instead of asking, what can we add to make this better, they're asking, what can we remove while maintaining effectiveness?" Through the observation port, Marcus watched a hegemony transport dock with the station. Fleet Admiral Zorik himself emerged, accompanied by a delegation that would have been unthinkable before the tournament. The same alien who had accused Marcus of cheating was now Earth's most enthusiastic trading partner. "The Admiral has placed another order," Thane continued. 50,000 infantry rifles built to human specifications. He claims his forces need weapons that function when everything else fails, as he puts it. Marcus smiled. Has he figured out the maintenance requirements yet? That's what I find most amusing. These new rifles require more maintenance than our old energy weapons, but the maintenance is simple enough that any soldier can perform it with basic tools. No specialized equipment, no certified technicians, no rare components from distant systems. The revolution wasn't limited to weapons. Human engineering principles were being applied across dozens of industries. Spacecraft engines that could be repaired with simple hand tools. Communication systems that worked without complex encryption protocols. Environmental suits that could be patched with tape and determination. Captain Nexus 7 approached from across the observation deck, his movement noticeably different from their first encounter. The cyborg warrior had undergone extensive modifications since their match, but not in the direction anyone expected. Instead of adding more technology, he had removed most of his enhancements. "Marcus," he said, offering a respectful nod, "I wanted to thank you for defeating you in combat, for teaching me that victory doesn't always require superior technology." Nexus 7 gestured to his simplified form. "I've removed most of my neural implants and quantum processors. My reflexes are slower now, my calculations less precise. But I'm also less vulnerable to system failures and electronic warfare." Marcus studied the transformed warrior with interest. "How are your forces adapting to the change?" "Better than expected. When soldiers can't rely on technology to solve their problems, they become more resourceful, more creative, more effective at basic combat skills. We're discovering that our ancestors weren't primitive. They were practical." Prince Kaler of the Nexian Empire joined their conversation, carrying a datapad full of economic projections. "The trade figures continue to astound our economists," he announced. "Human-manufactured goods now represent 30% of interstellar commerce, despite Earth producing less than 5% of the galaxy's total output. Quality over quantity," Marcus observed. "Indeed, a human tool that lasts 50 years is worth more than 10 alien tools that last 5 years each." Kaler paused, consulting his data. "Our manufacturing guilds are struggling to adapt. They've spent millennia optimizing for complexity and performance. Learning to optimize for reliability and simplicity requires different thinking entirely." The conversation was interrupted by an announcement from the station's communication system. "All personnel, prepare for incoming priority transmission from Earth Central Command." The observation deck's main display activated, showing Admiral Sarah Chun, Earth's newly appointed director of galactic relations. She was also Marcus's sister, though she had earned her position through diplomatic skill rather than marksmanship. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications, Admiral Chen began, I'm pleased to announce the successful conclusion of the Rigel Accords. The Stellar Alliance has agreed to adopt human engineering standards for all critical systems aboard their fleet vessels. Prince Kaler whistled softly. The Alliance has over 10,000 ships. Retrofitting them all to human standards will take years and cost fortunes, added Overlord Thane. But after what happened at the Battle of Kepler Station, they really had no choice. Marcus remembered that battle. Alliance forces had engaged a rogue AI swarm using their most advanced weapons. The enemy had adapted quickly, learning to counter energy weapons and disable guided missiles. The Alliance fleet had been on the verge of total defeat when a single human destroyer arrived with old-fashioned kinetic weapons. Projectile cannons that the AI couldn't adapt to had turned the tide of battle. There's more, Admiral Chen continued. The Hegemony Defense Force has requested human military advisors for their officer training programs. They want to learn what they're calling adaptive simplicity tactics. Captain Nexus, 7 chuckled. My former commanding officers spent weeks studying recordings of your tournament matches. They've concluded that human military doctrine represents the most sophisticated understanding of practical combat in the galaxy. Sophisticated? Marcus raised an eyebrow. They mean that appearing simple while being extremely effective requires more intelligence and skill than appearing complex while being marginally effective. The display shifted to show construction projects on Earth's moon. Massive industrial complexes were taking shape, designed to meet the galaxy's growing demand for human-manufactured goods. But the facilities themselves demonstrated Earth's design philosophy. Modular, maintainable, built to function reliably for centuries rather than operate at maximum efficiency for decades. Production estimates show we'll be able to meet current demand within 18 months, Admiral Chen reported. But orders continue to increase. Apparently, the galaxy is discovering that tools which don't break are worth paying premium prices for. Overlord Thane gestured toward the industrial images. Your species is becoming wealthy by selling us inferior technology. There's a certain irony in that. Marcus shook his head. We're not selling you inferior technology, Overlord. We're selling you appropriate technology. The best tool for a job isn't always the most advanced one. A lesson the galaxy is learning at considerable cost, Prince Kaler added. The Centauri Republic spent their entire military budget last year replacing energy weapons with kinetic systems. They claim the investment will pay for itself within 5 years through reduced maintenance and improved battlefield effectiveness. Through the observation port, Marcus watched another ship arrive, a massive Andromedan battlecruiser that had been completely retrofitted with human-designed systems. The vessel looked almost primitive compared to its original configuration, but its combat effectiveness had tripled according to recent fleet exercises. The most surprising development, Captain Nexus 7 continued, is how quickly younger military officers are adapting to human tactics. They're calling it thinking like humans, assuming everything will go wrong, and preparing for worst-case scenarios. It's changing civilian technology, too, Prince Kaler added. Consumer goods manufacturers are discovering that reliability sells better than features. Apparently, most beings prefer devices that work consistently over devices that work impressively when conditions are perfect. Admiral Chen's transmission concluded with a diplomatic announcement. Finally, I'm authorized to announce that Earth has accepted the Galactic Council's invitation to host next year's Military Technology Symposium. Representatives from all member species will gather to discuss what we're tentatively calling the practical revolution in military thinking. The display went dark, leaving the observation deck's occupants to contemplate the changes sweeping across galactic civilization. A year ago, Earth had been a primitive backwater barely worth acknowledging. Today, human engineering principles were reshaping military doctrine across 47 different species. Marcus looked down at his rifle, the same weapon that had started this transformation. The metal was still rusted, the tape still faded, the scope still cracked. But the galaxy no longer saw it as a primitive relic. They saw it as the perfect example of form following function, of effectiveness achieved through simplicity rather than complexity. Marcus, Overlord Thane said quietly, Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't volunteered for the tournament? Marcus considered the question seriously. Someone else would have eventually demonstrated the same principles. Earth's military philosophy isn't unique to me. It's how we all think about warfare. The galaxy would have learned these lessons eventually, but perhaps not peacefully. That was true. If the galaxy had discovered Earth's military capabilities during an actual conflict instead of a sporting tournament, the lessons would have been taught through bloodshed rather than competition. The tournament had provided a controlled environment where Earth could demonstrate its approach to warfare without the devastating consequences of actual war. The galaxy is fortunate, Captain Nexus 7 observed, that Earth chose to teach rather than conquer. Marcus shouldered his rifle and headed toward the station's central hub. Earth never wanted to conquer anyone. We just wanted to be left alone to live our lives. But we've learned that sometimes you have to prove you can fight before anyone will let you live in peace. As they walked through the station's corridors, they passed representatives from across the galaxy. Traders examining human-manufactured goods, military officers studying tactical manuals, engineers learning maintenance procedures that required wrenches instead of quantum computers. The galaxy was changing, adapting, learning to value reliability over sophistication. And at the center of it all was a simple truth that Earth had never forgotten. The best weapon is the one that works when you need it most, not the one that works best when everything goes perfectly. Marcus's rusted rifle had taught the galaxy that lesson. Now it was up to the galaxy to decide what to do with that knowledge. The revolution in thinking would continue, spreading from military applications to civilian technology, from weapons design to infrastructure planning. Complexity for its own sake was becoming passé. Functionality was the new sophistication. And somewhere on Earth, in factories that looked like museums compared to galactic industrial standards, workers continued building tools that would outlast the civilizations that bought them. Simple, reliable, effective, just the way humans had always made them.